All right, so this time it worked. Make it full screen. Yeah, pretty interesting mixture of results. They're kind of grouped here by their propagation amounts, maybe in terms of their general behavior. So you can see how strength was only a part of it. Even the propagation amounts really determined a lot how they behaved. The buildings flew off on the sides here, which is really funny to see. I can only assume that because the propagation amount is so high, that right when it exploded, it pretty much probably immediately broke all of the constraints in that area. So that force just, the top of the building must have just been disconnected from the bottom at that point, and it just flew off. It's really funny to see. On the other side, of course, you can see how long it even waits until it starts falling apart. It's actually quite nice, the way you can see it dragging down and all the pieces breaking off where it's colliding. But, even if that looks better, or maybe for all I know is more accurate, I don't even know. I like the middle ground here, again, the propagation's 2, because, I want it to be further along in the sim by the time our time limit runs out. And just in general, I don't want it to be so stiff like this. I want it to be a little softer. So looking at between these two, both of the propagation 2s, which one's better, strength 20,000 or strength 25,000? They're fairly similar. I would say that this one falls apart a little faster, which makes sense because the strength is less. But there's still a lot of very big chunks in it by the end. Both the ones that we made sure happen, this one and this one, and also just some emergent ones here. This one I like a good deal, but this one I would say, when it starts to fall here, it kind of, it jostles a little bit for a minute. I don't know. I mean, they're both pretty good. But I'm going to say, let's go with strength 20,000 and propagations 2 for our end result here. Pretty cool. I'm still looking at it. It's quite mesmerizing, isn't it? And remember, these are the low-res pieces that we're looking at. So the actual and final shapes will be even higher res when we switch back to that. So what are we deciding on? We're deciding on strength 20,000, propagations 2, which I think we actually had maybe even in our previous wedge, but now we know. And again, this one does look pretty good. I wouldn't fault you for liking it. I mean, it's just fairly similar. I don't know. Should I do that one? Yeah, I'm going to go with 2. Okay, 20,000 and 2. Don't let me forget this time. So what does that mean? That means every time, well, let's find out which wedge that even was. 20,002 was, I think, wedge number there. So it was wedge 2, which makes sense because it was the second, starting from the upper left, it was the second thing in our video. So just kind of remember this one, wedge index 1 technically, but it was wedge 2. So that is going to be, whenever you open Houdini, that's the one that we're going to want to end up setting. I might even just say, put a little note here. Say, choose wedge 2, index, in parentheses 1. Just so we don't forget. Because again, every time we close Houdini and open it, stuff's going to be unselected. So there we go. Similarly, we had a crash before, as you saw, and that's unfortunate. As a general rule, I would say before you run one of these big ol' things like this, close Houdini, open it again, so it's starting from a fresh slate before you run a big important thing like this. I mean, these sims have to run to the end, otherwise they haven't really finished running. You could experiment if you wanted to, put this in the manual for a minute. Sims can continue where they left off. If you look at the actual DOP network, you can turn on these checkpoint files, which will save checkpoints that you can then delete when you're done with them. But that's the only way you can continue a sim. Otherwise, it's going to have to start over again from scratch. Anything else down here, if the sims finish and it crashes while you're doing your OpenGL rendering or whatever else, that's okay. Then you can just reopen Houdini, reshift V this, and it'll just pick up the frames that it didn't finish from before. Because, you know, it'll find the ones that it did finish and just not do them again. I also find that sometimes it could be smart to make the frames per batch be lower if your Houdini is crashing all the time. It's possible that there's a memory leak or something where by the time one of your Houdini threads gets to the 60th frame in a row, it's taking up too much memory, or something is more likely to go wrong. So just reducing this down to 30 or 15 or something might have it take a little bit longer, but it'll at least finish. So that's pretty much it. If you think your sim would benefit from finishing out, like going to frame 240, by all means, change the frame range. Just run that. You know, we don't need to run the whole wedge if I wanted to just run this, again, this one, to frame 240. Now that it's set, you know, everything in Houdini, is showing us is in terms of that until we change it. So if I just come back out here and I went to like output, this file cache here is in terms of that. It's in terms of sim1 wedge 1. So I could just literally click save the disk right here. I don't have to do it through tops. Those variables have been set until I change them. But I'm not going to. So that's pretty cool. Nice chunky building collapse we've got going on now. So let's talk about actually rendering this.